Continuing the last part, it's the battle between Ed and Taylor's group. Our main character is shining, I guess so, enjoy watching. Talking about Elvira, losing her potions made things extremely difficult for her. As the top student of the alchemy department, she was also the main source of strength for the entire team. However, the biggest disadvantage of the alchemist is that the fewer magical tools and potions we have, the less capable we are in battle. Normally, alchemists carry magical tools like rings or necklaces for protection, but I never thought a genius like me would need them. This is just crazy. Don't tell me that guy already planned for this when facing me, she thought while staring intently at Ed across from her. Then she recalled every action he had taken earlier, like breaking the chandelier, and using the opportunity to create a wall of fire. All of this was just to target her item pouch. No, then he should have aimed directly at the pouch instead of the strap for no reason. But this guy is just Ed Roth-Taylor, a useless piece of trash. From her perspective, Ed is now gathering energy to cast the Windblade spell once again. Luckily for Elvira, at least she still has a few backup measures. I still have a few things left, Elvira thought as she pulled a magic stone out of her pocket. Then right after that, she threw the stone hard to the ground and summoned a two-winged rabbit. I will give it fire resistance and berserk fighting ability and then enhance it even more, she thought as she began to carve a magic circle on the rabbit's back. And right after the magic circle was completed, the tiny rabbit transformed into a giant, muscular berserk rabbit. Isla was also fumbling in the back, not knowing what spell could extinguish the fire. She awkwardly said, then began to use some kind of magic. But before Isla could finish, Ed on the opposite side unleashed his wind blade magic, charging straight toward her. And this made her scream in fear. But luckily for her, Taylor was nearby and rushed to the rescue just before the magic could hit Isla. He swung his sword fiercely and shattered the blade, all while shouting to Isla to stay alert. Isla was quite confident in her magical knowledge, but her combat skills were only average compared to the first-year students who had just learned basic magic. That guy was shamelessly targeting Isla, forcing me to protect her and preventing me from approaching him. Just moving through these flames was already quite difficult for me, Taylor thought as he gritted his teeth. Meanwhile, Elvira seemed to have completed her preparations and thought of a plan, so she said to Taylor, if I use magic to trap him, will you be able to defeat him? If that's the case, then watch this. Elvira shouted in anger and then began to command her rampaging rabbit to charge at Ed. And while this muscular rabbit was temporarily holding him back, it prevented him from using magic. Taylor rushed forward from behind, saying there's no time to hesitate anymore, I have to charge in and confront him right now. That's a good idea, Elvira calmly said. Then she draped her cloak over herself and charged straight toward her potions, ignoring the wall of flames blocking her path. But Isla seeing this panicked and shouted Elvira. Luckily, the flames weren't too strong, so she was able to safely reach her stash of potions. With joy, she said, do you all miss your mom? Even though we had to be apart for a moment, Mom really misses you all. And while she was still feeling cheerful, Ed on the opposite side had also finished gathering energy for his wind blade spell, and he aimed the spell straight at her without hesitation, ignoring the crazed rabbit in front of him. But truly, as expected of the top student in the alchemy, after regaining her magical potions, Elvira felt confident. He must have prepared thoroughly, but now she could cast her magic potions. Thinking about this, Elvira threw the vial in her hand forward and said, you've miscalculated. Next, Ed's blade collided with Elvira's potion vial. As soon as the collision occurred, that was designed to create an explosive reaction. The moment the two forces met, a significant explosion erupted, sending a cloud of purple-blue dust into the air. Elvira's earlier vial contained a special potion made from walnut flowers and finely chopped brown mushrooms, combined with a specific spell that unleashed powerful magic. The potion's purpose was to control magical abilities and temporarily halt any derivatives generated by magic. This allowed Elvira to disrupt Ed's magic and create an opportunity for her team to gain the upper hand in the battle. As anticipated, once the cloud of dust spread outwards, all the flames were extinguished. Elvira glanced at Ed, who had just killed her giant rabbit, and pondered, do you understand what this means, esteemed mage? Now that you can't use magic, what will you do? On Ed's side, upon witnessing the scene, he remained calm and showed no signs of fear. His composure suggested that he had a plan in mind, even in the face of such adversity. This only fueled Elvira's anger, and she couldn't hold back her frustration as she yelled, what are you pretending for? We have a fighter on our side, Ed Taylor. Right now, she commanded. Hearing this, Taylor shouted, Ed Roth-Taylor. His voice was filled with determination, ready to step up in the fight against their adversary. Taylor then charged forward to attack Ed once more. Seeing this, Ed immediately turned and fled in the opposite direction. Afterward, he casually pulled down a bookshelf to block Taylor's path, hoping to slow him down and create a barrier between them. At the same time, the bucket of oil he had prepared earlier tipped over, spilling oil everywhere and creating a slippery hazard on the ground. And it was obvious that as soon as the oil came into contact with the remaining embers, it would ignite, creating a dangerous fire hazard that could easily engulf the area. It would create an explosion, and once again, the first floor would be engulfed in flames. The smell is oil, Taylor muttered, and Elvira behind him couldn't help but shout, "Are you crazy? This is the awfulest hall. If the fire spreads through the corridor, then surely someone will get hurt. Fire created by magic, fire created by oil. I can cut both with a single swing. The elemental slash effect of the potion that limits magic only lasts for a few minutes, so before anyone gets hurt, I have to end this," Taylor shouted loudly, then charged forward once more. Meanwhile, Elvira at the back realized something, then hurriedly shouted, "Wait, Taylor." The window opened wide enough for her to escape outside. Even the carpets and flammable objects had disappeared. Ed Taylor had anticipated this step. Thinking of this, Elvira shouted again, "No, Taylor." At that moment, Ed had drawn his bow. He was ready to aim directly at Taylor. He clenched his teeth and thought, asterisk, so he knows how to use a bow too. But I can block this arrow, asterisk. Then Ed released the arrow, aiming it straight ahead. Taylor saw this and quickly tilted his head to the side to dodge. But then he realized that he wasn't Ed's target. But the target of Ed was actually Isla, who was about to use a type of magic behind him. Isla still couldn't cast basic defensive spells, Taylor thought, and then shouted, "Isla," and just as the arrow was about to hit her, it was bound by a beam of light and hung in midair. The person responsible was none other than Elvira beside her. She had used some kind of magical equipment to stop the arrow. It was called the claw hand, a type of magical weapon that creates a force to hold small objects from a distance, as long as they are within the control of the casting user. Turning towards Elvira, she was also surprised as she looked at the arrow she had just caught. But this arrow, it was just a stick wrapped in cloth at the tip. What kind of trick is this? Thinking quickly, Elvira hurriedly warned Taylor, "Wait, Taylor, be careful, he definitely has something hidden." Right after she finished speaking, Taylor in the front swung his sword towards Ed, but he blocked it with the bow in his hand. And at the moment, when Ed was still struggling to defend himself, he suddenly heard loud noises coming from the second floor. "Run away, or everyone will die." After hearing this sound, Ed immediately realized who was the source of the noise. It was the boss from the second floor, the gloomy Clebius, who had taken control of the awfulest hall. After confirming that the sound was from Clebius, Ed let out a sigh of relief. Then Taylor intentionally released his power and knocked him toward the wall behind. This left Elvira, who was behind, astonished and unable to believe what she was seeing. "What the heck is going on?" She said this while looking straight at Ed. And as for Taylor, right after Ed gave up, he quickly ran over, grabbed the collar of his shirt, and shouted, "Are you crazy? There must be a reason for what you did." And at this moment, Elvira gritted her teeth in frustration, thinking to herself, "So annoying, it feels like he's completely outplaying us." If he really wanted to defeat us, Elvira thought, he wouldn't have revealed himself and caused such a commotion by breaking the chandelier. Yet, he appeared right in front of us to block our path. And even in that fight, he remained unusually calm. There's definitely something unusual going on. Facing Taylor's question, Ed put on an indifferent expression and casually said, "Are you done? If you're done, then go up there. Stop messing around," Ed added, still maintaining his nonchalant attitude. Taylor, after hearing Ed's words, looked bewildered and asked, "What did you just say? You've been blocking our way this whole time, and now you're spouting nonsense." As soon as Taylor finished speaking, Elvira stepped forward, visibly angry, and said, "Why are you holding back your strength like that?" Taylor, confused by her comment, asked, "Elvira, what are you talking about? Holding back? To fight us?" "Yes, I can't let this go. Answer me now," Elvira demanded, her voice sharp. "Why didn't you use all of your strength?" She spoke while glaring intensely at Ed, her face filled with anger. But Ed merely cast a cold glance at her, saying nothing. This only fueled Elvira's anger even more. And at that very moment, the grand entrance doors to the hall suddenly swung open. The girl had plucked a flower and pinned it in her hair after a sleepless night of contemplation. Who could blame that innocent girl? Even if it were an illusion, anyone could imagine a scene of perfect fulfillment for themselves. However, illusions and reality are painfully different. The young man, who seemed poised to step into the rose garden with an elegant appearance, somehow fell victim to an ambush by a group of people, sitting helplessly on the floor, his face stained with blood. "What are you all doing?" Jenica said with a cold voice and expression. It would be a lie to say that she didn't feel uncomfortable at all, but she was sure he had gotten into an unexpected situation. However, looking at the simple life, his actions when facing Glaskin, It doesn't matter how complicated the problem is, Ed Rothtaylor creates a belief that somehow he will resolve it satisfactorily. But only when pushed to the last resort does human complacency get shattered. Until then, I will do my utmost to help you, that's what Jenica said to Ed. However, Ed Rothtaylor did not seek help. The reason he kept Jenica away from the Ophilus Hall and left a strange letter while fighting until he bled was because of the Glasgow incident, which subjected her to harsh disciplinary measures. Therefore, Ed didn't want her to participate in this battle. As for Jenica, she was filled with chaotic thoughts, unsure of what had happened. He was thinking of her to keep her out of trouble. While worrying about what to wear, Jenica clenched the flower in her hairpin tightly, her thoughts racing. Meanwhile, Taylor, not understanding the situation, was relieved to see Jenica. Thank goodness you're not caught up in this, Senpai Jenica, he exclaimed. Right now, the Ophilus Hall is occupied by other students, but I don't think this will end easily. Ed went to such lengths just to stop us. So there must be something deeper going on. But before he could finish his sentence, Alvira beside him anxiously said, "Get back to your senses, Taylor, that's the enemy." And before they said that, Jenica's face darkened and she said, "You know what, actually, whatever you guys are doing, I don't care." She spoke while unleashing a terrifying surge of magic that absorbed everything around her. Even the floor right beneath her feet cracked into many pieces. And in the bewildered eyes of everyone, the spirit mage Jenica has begun to demonstrate her true power. With just a thought, she has summoned high-level spirits. "Don't worry, Ed. Wait for me just a minute," Jenica said with a smile. But this declaration from Jenica made Elvira on the opposite side panic. Just a minute. She wasn't joking. If we add elemental spirits and other spirits, it would be as strong as an entire army. Their opponent now is the second-year female student, the best in the entire magic, and right after he finished saying this, Jenica in front also began to command her spirits to attack. Just like that, a series of elemental attacks began to rain down on them. Elvira could only hold her head and scream, "Taylor, think, face the reality. All the windows are shattered, this is the only escape." "That's true, but there might be students getting hurt." "Elvira, I can't waste your precious potions," Taylor said while gripping the sword tightly in his palm. And preparing to face the attacks from these spirits head-on, Taylor sensed something from Ed that the siege on Ophilus was a bit unusual. Taylor wouldn't back down from the challenge. His destiny would be to live an extraordinary life as the main character in his story. But at least, him facing Jenica here wasn't part of the script. He had more important things to deal with. So at this moment, Ed grabbed Taylor by the collar and threw him back. Just like that, Taylor escaped death from the terrifying punch of this gorilla spirit. Turning to Ed at this moment, he glanced back and said to Taylor, "I'll handle Jenica, you all hurry to the second floor as planned." Isla, who was supporting Taylor, was also astonished and said, "What are you talking about? You were the one who blocked our way before, and now you're telling us to go to the second floor? I think you should go quickly," Ed said hurriedly. Elvira laughed with a sly grin after hearing this. "Really, you plan to stop those spirits while you're covered in injuries like this? Do you think you can handle it?" And in response to Elvira's words, Ed threw the potion pouch straight at her head, causing her to cry out in pain. Bringing the potion, Ed said, "Sorry for cutting your pouch." Elvira, hearing him say that, was completely confused. "But why, while discussing this, do you have to bring up that? Seriously? But fine, I'll let you off the hook for now. Let's go, Taylor." After saying this, Taylor's group quickly moved to the second floor immediately before those spirits could turn them into meat patties. As for Jenica, at this moment, she was still in a state of corruption. But right after she saw Ed approaching her, she snapped back to reality and worriedly said, "Ed, don't push yourself too hard. Get away from here. I'll handle the rest for you. You can explain everything to me later. First, let me finish this quickly and heal you." Seeing her so anxious, Ed also calmly thought about this course of action. It was a bit rough, but oh well. Thinking this, Ed also spoke up, "Jenica, I really am fine, so don't push yourself too hard." He said this while placing both hands on her shoulders, and this action made Jenica's face turn a shade of pink as she awkwardly replied, "Ed, your hands are on my shoulders, you know." And it seemed that the more awkward Jenica got, the stronger the wind she created. It was so strong that Ed had to speak up quickly. "Jenica, first pull back your army of spirits. The wind is too strong. I can barely stand here." "Oh, right, sorry about that. What am I doing? This is really silly." As Jenica spoke, she hurriedly dispelled her spirit magic. The group behind Taylor was also wide-eyed, looking on in disbelief. "Did he really win?" Elvira exclaimed in astonishment. At this moment, Ed also looked toward them and waved his hand, signaling for them to go. "Hurry up, There probably isn't much time left, Ed thought to himself. After that, he collapsed from exhaustion. After a while, Jenica's worried voice echoed again, "You're hurt this badly, and you still didn't call for me? I told you to call me if anything happened. This situation is a bit special. Next time, I'll tell you everything," Ed replied calmly. But Jenica was still a little angry. Those guys are really too much. How could they let you get hurt like this? I don't know exactly what happened, but if I run into them again, I'll teach them a lesson. No matter what, Ed, don't let yourself get hurt again, okay? Do you understand? Promise me that? Alright, thank you for worrying about me, Ed calmly said, then slowly stood up and thought. Although everything was a bit off from the original plan and he had no idea how he had ended up as the boss of the first floor, he could now relax at the cabin. However, this moment of joy didn't last 3 seconds before Jenica delivered some news that startled him. "Oh, Ed, earlier while sitting in the rose garden, I saw a huge carriage. It was moving too fast, so I couldn't see it clearly, but it had a golden crown on top." Upon hearing this, his expression stiffened because he clearly understood what that carriage was. The golden crown is the emblem of the Elt Merchant Guild. The adoptive father of Lordle, who is also the one who killed her biological father, will appear in the final episode of the second arc. In the battle over the sage's sealed grimoire, he will disappear after being betrayed by Lordle, becoming the secondary antagonist known as the Golden King Elt. The fact that he arrived at the academy earlier than expected means something significant has occurred, something beyond his understanding. Meanwhile, the Golden King Elt has reached the entrance of the Awfulest Hall. Scene shifts to the 5th floor corridor of the Awfulest Hall, where Lordle observes everything outside through the window. She then speaks to the head maid, Alice, beside her. "Do you know about this, Alice? I've been turned down." "You know," Lordle continues, "the one who looks so wicked and rude." Alice, standing beside her, replies calmly, "You're talking about Ed, the one you met in the forest, right?" "Yes, that's him," Lordle confirms. "I didn't realize he was your type. His look aren't bad. But that's not what I meant. I got the same feeling from him as I did from you. At that moment, I accidentally let slip a few things I shouldn't have said. And then he cut me off without any mercy." "People like us have to endure words like that," Lordle said, turning to look at the head maid. The one named Alice is the head maid of the Awfulest Hall, a mature maid with over 25 years of service experience. She started her apprenticeship as a maid at the age of 15, with no knowledge at all. Eventually, Alice's abilities were recognized, and she became the head maid of the Awfulest Hall at a very young age. For Lordle, this was the place where she pursued her biggest dream in life. She had spent a huge amount of money to win Alice over, and it left a significant hole in the budget. However, for Lordle, that price was not considered a waste at all, because she had found someone willing to abandon all their beliefs and core values that they had spent a lifetime pursuing in exchange for gold and silver, and that was no different than selling their soul. Only when this little girl found them would she be freed from her loneliness. It could be because she lived a life where she had to harm others before they harmed her, struggling in a slum to grab every morsel, every coin in such a world where it was either kill or be killed. But no matter how unfortunate her past was or what circumstances pushed Lordle to the brink, this person was definitely a villain, a hidden villain. Back to the story. At this moment, Lordle continued speaking. "At this rate, Will Lane, representing the weaker student group, will take control of the management office on the 4th floor, if we give him control over the defense magic at the right time. Anyway, he will destroy the Awfulest Hall," Lordle said, wondering what the real situation was. She said, flashing a smug smile. "Everything seems to be going according to plan, so I'll just stay in the storage room," she said. "I have to act like an obedient student, horrified and clueless, so I'll hide in the storage room as soon as possible." And in response to Lordle's words, the head maid truly felt pity for her. She really is a pitiful person, she thought, living her whole life without being able to love anyone or open her heart to a close friend, like a peer, and now, she will die in loneliness. Alice thought as she slowly drew her sword. "Miss Lordle, since things have turned out this way, may I say a few words? I'm not like you." After saying this, Alice rested his sword against Lordle's neck, catching her off guard. Scene shifts to Taylor's group. After reaching the 2nd floor, they encounter the boss of that level, Clebius, so they capture the young man who is trying to escape on the 2nd floor, defeat him, and force him to join their group. After moving up to the 3rd floor, the boss of the 3rd floor, the washing machine Kelly, tried to stop them. However, she was defeated because she was missing her twin sister Sunny. She was no match for Taylor and his group. Of course, Taylor and his crew didn't realize that one of the twin maids was alone. And so, they approached their target. The 4th floor of the Awfulest Hall was much easier to access than they had planned. But to be more precise, the difficulty on the 1st floor was unusually high. After stepping onto the 4th floor, they immediately encountered the scene of students running for their lives. The reason they were running was because the boss of the fourth floor, Will Lane, was being manipulated by the defensive magic. All of this was part of Alice and Lordle's plan. They had left behind a crystal ball to activate the management system of the magic circle in the center of the control room. The defensive spells were inscribed all over the Awfulest Hall. They were originally designed to protect the students from external forces, but the current scene was simply that of a child losing control over the very defensive magic of the academy that he couldn't manage. Right now, Taylor's group had to stop the attacks from Will Lane, who was in a state of losing control. The shock from their battle also made the entire building shake violently. This also made the remaining students, trapped inside their rooms, feel nothing but fear. What's happening outside? At this rate, the building will collapse. Where are the maids? And what the hell are they doing? We need to get out of here now. Sounds of panic began to echo. The students of the Awfulest Hall, who had been trying to stay calm, began to use their abilities to find a way to escape as the situation grew more tense. Like a signal, the entire crowd began to break the windows and rush straight outside. Back to the battle, Taylor was struggling to block the attacks and turned to ask Elvira beside him, "Elvira, do you have any night butterfly flower left?" Hearing this, Elvira quickly explained, "Night butterfly flower only distorts the magical power of the user. It doesn't affect the magical circle, like in this case. In a closed space, this will definitely be useful," she said as she pulled out a vial of bright green liquid. "This is anglerweed reagent. It's a mixture of devilfish eggs and emperor shell." Next, Elvira vigorously threw the solution onto the walls and said, "This should be enough to block all the basic magic in the hallway. All of those are support spells. There are many, but I can still handle it. So you guys don't need to worry about this side. Two of you, hurry up and defeat Will Lane," she said while kicking Clebius in the rear, causing him to lunge forward in tears. "Why is it me?" he yelled. Meanwhile, on the opposite side, Will Lane, in a state of losing control, was also creating countless attack magic circles against them. But at a terrifying speed, both skilled swordsmen easily dodged these attacks and closed in on him. Then immediately after, the attacks from both of them reached Will Lane. The result of this attack caused the entire hallway area to explode. The scene shifts to Ed. He and Jenica are quietly hiding to the side, observing the carriage of the Golden King Elt. "Ed, what are you doing?" Jenica asked. "If you don't stay still, your wound will tear open." But Ed wasn't too concerned about that. He remained focused on the carriage and said, "It's not that serious. Most of this blood isn't mine." "You really are something," Jenica said helplessly. But after seeing Elt's carriage, Ed felt even more troubled. "Damn, it looks so simple and ordinary, with no flair at all." Looking at the flashy exterior of the carriage, it seemed like the person inside was a big shot. However, considering who was sitting inside, even this carriage was just a frugal, low-class ride. Golden King Elt usually travels with more than 10 carriages and has a whole entourage following him, but today, he came here alone, which indicates that he wants to act quickly and secretly. Elt is Lordle's adoptive father. After being betrayed by Lordle, he became a secondary boss, an important figure. However, he cannot appear at the academy right now. What is he planning to do? It seems the carriage has been stopped there for a while, and now he's just stepping outside. Is he waiting for Hall 7 to be completely destroyed? Ed thought to himself, and right after that, his eyes widened as he saw a familiar figure ahead. The maid girl standing in front, holding an umbrella, was the twin maid of the floor boss, Sunny. Sunny was one of the orphan children raised by the head maid, Alice. Alice had been completely subjugated by Lordle, and she was supposed to be the boss of the third floor. However, the strange thing was that she was with Lordle's enemy, Elt. Sunny could never betray Alice. Alice had been bought off by Latte, but what if Alice joined King Elt's side and betrayed Lordle? If that's the case, there would only be one future, Lordle's defeat. The one who will have a political conflict with Princess Fenia in Chapter 3 is Lordle, who will also be the greatest supporting force in the war against the Rothailer family in Chapter 4. Now it's very difficult for her to fulfill the role of a middle-tier boss. The situation has completely changed, but what about Lordle's role now? I can't guess anymore. Thinking of this, Ed quickly turned to Jenica beside him and said, "Jenica, I want to ask you for a favor. It's an emergency, and I can't act alone." After saying this, Ed still worried about how to explain it to her, but unfortunately, Ed's worries were somewhat unnecessary, because right after that, Jenica hurriedly said, "Okay, what should I do now?" Let's go back to a time before the event to seize the Awfulest Hall officially began. A letter had been sent to Golden King Elt. "Dear President of the Elt Merchants, Golden King Elt Ketchuln, I am writing this letter to inform you that, contrary to her obedient and docile appearance, your adopted daughter. Lord Ketchum is actually plotting to betray and seize control of the Elt Merchant Association. Miss Lordle knows that you killed her biological parents and is using this information to rally support from the forces and stakeholders of the Elt Merchant Association to back her and overthrow you. In addition, the negotiation to purchase the Sage's sealed grimoire is a trap to lure you to the Sylvania Academy and prevent you from reacting in time to the incident occurring at the Elt Merchant Association headquarters. I am revealing this information to you for certain reasons, and I possess a secret letter that can prove Miss Lordle's conspiracy. But you know that nothing is free. Miss Lordle promised me a large sum of money, so if I don't receive more than that, I might turn to her instead. I'm about to go blind and have nearly lost all my hearing after an accident. This could be my last year as a maid. I'm the only one cornered and the only one who knows the whole truth. Depending on my decision, everything could become more complicated or simpler. The contents recorded in the document attached to this letter include the names of the organizations I usually manage in secret. The amount of gold sent to these facilities will determine my next actions. I hope you will be kind and wise in making a decision. Sincerely, Alice, headmaid of Ophelis Hall. Additional information: the secret organizations mentioned by Alice are, in fact, the orphanages she supports. Scene shifts to Lordle at this moment. Alice continues, "Don't move. Lord Elt will soon arrive at Ophelis Hall. I didn't expect you to react this way. I thought you were someone who kept a cool head. Miss Lordle, you said you would take revenge on Golden King Elt. However, I must apologize, but I think the two of you are not much different." "And I am the same," Alice said calmly. But at that moment, a loud explosion rang out behind them, startling both of them. Then, a voice echoed, stating that someone like Will Lane could never breach the magical defense system. Indeed, the real culprit behind this incident was the head maid, Alice. She was holding someone hostage. "Be careful, Taylor," Elvira warned, pointing directly at Alice, taking advantage of Alice's distraction due to Taylor's arrival. As Lordle rushed towards them, her friends called out, "Lordle, are you okay?" Lordle bit her lip, her mind racing as she thought, "I'm fine. Look over there. That's the culprit behind this chaos." She knew they had to defeat Alice quickly. "I have to say that and pin the blame on her right away." The group looked at Lordle with worried expressions, their concern evident in their eyes. "Lordle, what's wrong with your expression?" Lordle silently pondered, "What's wrong with my expression?" Then, she suddenly realized something. Then she quickly ran away, leaving everyone worried and anxious. "The Golden King Elt is coming. Due to his lack of trust in his subordinates, he will personally come here. The plan to overthrow him and take control of the Elt Merchant is almost complete. The responsibility for manipulating public opinion and causing damage will fall on him, forcing him to resign from the Elt Merchant. Fortunately, Elt hasn't arrived yet. I need to contact the operators at the headquarters. I'll send them the secret letter hidden in the room, and then I just need to escape somewhere. The key point of the plan is simply not to get caught. That's enough. I can't let myself fall apart. I have to try harder. No one understands me at all. If it's betrayal, then I've already prepared myself for this. I've gone through too much of this already. So, my heart shatters right now. This isn't mine. I've become stronger," Lordle thought as her body trembled with every beat, her beautiful face now drenched in tears. But right after that, she regained her determination and continued running straight ahead. "So I need to do everything possible, keep running, and get to that room before Elt arrives. All problems will be solved as long as I can send the letter." Meanwhile, in the main lobby on the first floor, Golden King Elt had officially entered this place but was stopped by someone. "What did you just say, student? Evacuate quickly." And in response to his words, Ed's calm voice also echoed, "Because of the risk of the hall collapsing, no one is allowed to enter this room for safety reasons. Until the professors arrive, I can't let anyone pass." Elt's bodyguards saw this and started to move forward to deal with Ed, but he stopped them and said, "Did you receive an order from the Academy office?" "No, we act based on our own will. Sylvania has a reward system for situations like this," Ed calmly responded and then thought, "There are three people controlling the storyline. First is Lordle, who intends to overthrow Elt Ketchum to avenge her childhood and take the position of chairman of the Permanent Council. The second is Elt Ketchum, who wants to thwart Lordle's plan and has successfully bought the Sage's sealed grimoire. And finally, the most elusive and enigmatic woman Alice is the main reason leading to the turning point of the story. I don't know why she betrayed her, but she's on the 5th floor with Lordle. So what now? Should I run up to the 5th floor to stop her? Probably not necessary. Even if we don't get involved, she'll still clash with Taylor's group, according to the script. I trust and assign that task to Taylor's team. They are very reliable, because I personally verified their abilities. Therefore, I will handle this matter first and prevent Elt from entering the Ophelis Hall, regardless of what he is planning. But the event at the Ophelis Hall will still proceed as usual. Thinking of this, Ed also started to switch to his acting mode. bowing his head in surprise, and saying, "No way, could it be that you are Elt Ketchuln, the president of the Elt Merchantry? If a nobleman as esteemed as Lord Elt has come all the way here, it must be for some noble reason. But you should talk to the academy first so that you can be welcomed appropriately according to your status." And before Ed's words, even a smart person like Elt immediately realized the problem, then coldly said, "Oh, I see. It seems you belong to Lord Elt's side, don't you?" Back to about 10 minutes ago, Ed also asked Jenica to use her spirit to destroy someone's room wall and then spoke inside. The situation outside is like that, yet you still haven't left here. Ed was speaking while looking straight at the guy Ziggs, who was practicing inside. When Ziggs saw Ed break the wall just to talk to him, he felt a bit awkward. "Well, I can't act impulsively. Even if this building collapses, I won't die. You think you're strong, so you can do whatever you want." Who would have thought this guy was a wizard, Ed thought to himself. But at this moment, the wolf guy also stopped his training and asked, "Why did you drill a huge hole in my room wall? It's freezing. Are you planning to turn me into Elsa sleeping on the bed?" Speaking of this, he also noticed Jenica standing next to Ed, so he quickly bowed his head and said, "Senior Jenica, I'm sorry I'm only greeting you properly now, although our relationship isn't the best because of the Glaskin incident." Jenica, on the other side, heard this and responded sadly, "Yes, I'm very sorry about that." "Don't be sad, Jenica," Ed said. "You've already completed your disciplinary action, right?" "Yes, that's true, thank you, Ed," Jenica replied cheerfully. Their heartwarming exchange left Ziggs, who was standing nearby, puzzled. "By the way, are you two a couple?" "No, not at all." Jenica jumped in surprise and quickly responded, clearly flustered. Jenica's reaction was so exaggerated that even Ed, standing beside her, turned to look at her with a suspicious gaze. This only made Jenica feel even more embarrassed. "Ed, did I make you uncomfortable?" "No, it's fine," Ed reassured her, shaking his head. "It's just that Ziggs was being rude first." Ziggs, after hearing Ed say that, also bowed down and apologized to them. Then he looked up and got straight to the point. "So the reason you two had to break down the wall to get in here is?" "That's right, I want to ask you for a favor, and I'll pay you later," Ed calmly said. Returning to the present, Golden King Elt also stared at Ed with a very terrifying gaze and coldly said, "Has its beautiful appearance deceived you? Instead of being loyal to the gold coins you might not even receive, you should seize the immediate benefits right in front of you. That girl was born with the blood of a fox. She's the type of person who will stab you in the back the moment she gets the chance. The father who raised her since childhood is the one who understands her better than anyone else. I will immediately give you double the amount he promised. Now, get out of my way," and before his words. Then Ed calmly replied, "I am very grateful to you, but I haven't received a single gold coin, so what's the point of doubling or tripling it?" he said while looking straight at Elt. But Elt also knew that the negotiation seemed pointless, so he didn't intend to say much anymore. "All right, so we don't understand each other. Let's settle this neatly," he said while waving his hand, giving orders to the bodyguards. The hunting dogs, after hearing their master's command, rushed towards Ed. However, Ed wasn't foolish. As soon as he saw the group charging at him, he quickly turned and ran away. But the bodyguards immediately reacted. Trying to run away, these two shouted and simultaneously blocked in front of him, but they hadn't even had a chance to show any moves. Then they were blown far away by a strong wind. But the master of this whirlwind magic is none other than the physical mage Ziggs. "Senior, are you okay?" Hearing that, Ed quickly turned around and said, "I'll check the situation and be right back. I hope you two can buy me some time. I'll repay this favor later." After saying this, Ed immediately rushed upstairs. Then the two of them stood blocking the stairs and cheerfully said, "All right, didn't I still owe you from before?" At that moment, Elt's gaze turned towards them, becoming colder and colder. He then said, "Even though they're still students, they're tough opponents, charge at them." Hearing their master's command, the bodyguards immediately charged forward. And just like that, the battle between Jenica, Ziggs, and the pack of bodyguards began. As for Ed, he rushed upstairs to search for Lordle. "Now I need to find Lordle and tell her what's going on outside." And just like that, Lordle came running down from the 4th floor and immediately spotted Ed. "You can't get outside, right? We should go around through the back door and escape first. Do you still have the strength to run? Follow me," Ed said to Lordle. Kindness and trust often go hand in hand for a corresponding reason. The reason Shero, the receptionist of the Elt Trading Association, favors Lordle is that he hopes she will inadvertently reveal some confidential information. The reason Cadden, another employee of the Trading Association, is particularly friendly with Lordle is that she provides him with valuable advice. The reason Teeny, the pet bird that constantly follows Lordle around, is so attached to her is that she feeds it premium food. Every act of kindness is linked to a reason. much like the value of money, at least in Lordle's world, that's how things are. Returning to the story, Ed was leading Lordle while saying, "It seems I don't have time to explain everything in detail, but Alice has betrayed you, right?" In response to his question, Lordle could only bite her lip and think about it, realizing it was a foolish mistake. She grew up surrounded by love and care, treating the whole world with that same love and attention. Jenica Lover is different from me. The day I made the proposal to Ed Rothtaylor, I noticed the adoring look in her eyes as she gazed at him, as if she didn't expect anything in return. I wondered if I could have a relationship like that, so I told Alice the entire plan. But I never thought my way of living distrusting anyone would fade if I hadn't seen the scene of those two back then. I will never forget this dirty and dark self of mine. I won't delude myself into thinking I can become a romantic version of myself. The 5 people I bribed to seize the Awfulest Hall include the head maid, Alice, the twin maids, Sunny and Kelly, the weaker representative, Will Lane, and the fallen noble, Ed Rothtaylor. Alice, Sunny, and Kelly have already sided with Elt, and Will Lane will likely follow him as well. And this person too, she thought as she stared directly at Ed, making him a bit curious. Then Lordle paused and spoke up, saying, "I'm sorry, Senior Ed, but I'm not sure I can give you the 20 gold coins as promised. As you can see, my situation is currently unstable." After saying this, she felt a bit regretful. Why did I say that? Why did I think he shouldn't stay with me? Lordle questioned herself. But at that moment, Ed's response rang out, surprising her immensely. "Who asked about your situation?" He stopped abruptly, saying, "What are you doing? If Elt catches you, your life will end right here." To achieve her future plans, she needed to escape first. Ed hurriedly pulled her along as he spoke. This action of his left golden daughter feeling utterly bewildered. Ed, on the opposite side, continued, "Now explain everything to me. Why did you do that?" Kindness and trust often go hand in hand for a corresponding reason. If you can't see the reason, you shouldn't trust, of course. That's been my life's truth. But today, this trust wavered once again, after hearing Ed's question. Lordle explained that the central office of the Trading Association had planned to manipulate prices, and it was likely that her father was behind this scheme. You know, the prices of equipment have dropped significantly since the monster attack in the Eastern Mountains. By buying up all the remaining equipment and monopolizing it, he can trade internally nonstop and manipulate prices. All of this is part of his illegal activities. My father has the money to carry out the plan. He said he found someone willing to pay a high price for the sage's sealed grimoire, so he sent me to Sylvania to steal that book. Turning to Ed, he understood everything clearly at this point, so he said, "All right, you don't need to explain any further." After saying this, he began to think to himself. Money laundering is a classic tactic used to artificially inflate market prices. Through 3 merchants, A, B, and C, those individuals are granted access to low-priced goods on the market and trade among themselves. However, money laundering relies on mutual trust. If merchants B and C secretly sell off goods on the market, prices will drop immediately. Therefore, A, who has to endure monopolizing the goods and borrowing money to purchase equipment like Elt, will bear the entire loss alone and be stripped of their current position. Lordle had acquired dozens of other companies corresponding to B and C over the years to prepare for this plan. However, Elt had to leave the central office so that the 6 merchant shareholders of the company could receive the right to sell goods. Thinking of this, Ed also explained what he understood about Lordle's plan to her to see if it was correct. "You've elevated the scale of the battle for the Awfulest Hall to pressure the financial office and to actualize the negotiation to purchase the sage's sealed grimoire. Your plan is to use that to kick Ely, who desperately needs money, out of the central office, while also selling the equipment there, right?" Lordle stood behind him, her face filled with curiosity as she thought, how the hell did he grasp the situation so easily? At that moment, Ed in front of her proposed a solution, saying, "Then all you need to do is this one thing." She was looking for a way to send that letter to the central office of the Trading Association and instruct them to sell the equipment immediately, right? After hearing this, Lordle quickly replied, "Yes, I have a carrier pigeon in my room. It connects directly to our internal network at the central office of the Trading Association. If I send the carrier pigeon and hide carefully until the plan to sell the equipment is successfully executed, then I will win. But you must have guessed part of it already. He intends to force me to reveal the entire plan and those close to me." After hearing her words, Ed fell silent for a moment before saying, "Listen closely, Lordle. From now on," Ed continued, "you must hide and avoid being seen at all costs. If I were Elt, I would send people to block both bridges leading to Archon Mountain to ensure you get caught there. Tell the coachman waiting outside to go to Icon Island with the empty carriage. Instruct him to leave the carriage in a safe place and then run away to another location. This way, they'll think you've left Archon Island. Then what do I have to hide? I built a small hut in the northern forest. You just need to stay there for 3 days. I'll go to your room and send a messenger pigeon. As long as you can write a message saying to sell it immediately, then everything will be resolved. Yes, that's right, Lordle hurriedly replied. At that moment, Ed realized something. He quickly grabbed Lordle and advised her firmly. There's someone at the back door. I'll deal with that person and head straight to your room. In the meantime, keep a close eye on everything around you. If you don't see anyone, quickly run to the trading district. On the opposite side, the main character's words only deepened Lordle's astonishment. He acted like an experienced merchant, making no unnecessary movements or gestures. She even began to believe that it would be safe to entrust everything to him this time. Seeing her lost in thought, Ed couldn't help but ask, "Are you really okay? You look so distant. It's not like you at all." "Yes, I understand, Senior Ed," she replied, her voice filled with curiosity. "Why are you helping me so much?" The sudden question from her made the protagonist feel a bit awkward. "Why, well, I guess it's because I want to help you," he replied. After saying this, Ed turned away immediately. And just after he left, Lordle's entire body collapsed, as if she had lost all her strength. Then, the sound of thudding echoed in her ears. This rapid sound was the final battle between Taylor's group and Alice, wasn't it? Isn't it a bit closer? Isn't it the battle on the first floor? No, even closer. I can't believe it. But this is the heartbeat of my own heart, Lordle thought, breathing heavily. As Ed stepped out through the back door, he was immediately stopped by someone. "I didn't expect you, Ed, to be the one coming out from there," the person said. "How surprising," the owner of the voice said. It was Sunny, in charge of the dishes. Seeing Sunny's appearance, Ed felt a bit annoyed. It seemed like a final effort on her part. "Honestly, it's a bit pathetic," he said coldly. Now, this tragic story was finally coming to an end. Returning to the battle between Taylor and Alice, Alice had connected the magical defense system of the Awfulous Hall. With swordsmanship skills on par with those of close combat students, she even mastered intermediate-level magic. That is the head maid, Alice. However, Alice stands no chance against Taylor because Taylor is the main protagonist of this story. Act 2 Scene 3, Conquest of Head Main Alice, the final battle begins. Ed glanced at Sunny, contemplating the situation quietly. "I'm running low on mana," he thought, "and I only have enough strength left for 2 or 3 basic spells." As Ed was still lost in thought, Sunny took the initiative and charged forward, lunging with her sword directly at him. However, it was unfortunate for Sunny that her lightning-fast strike was easily dodged by Ed. He had anticipated this move, having memorized her attack patterns. Sunny's first strike was aimed directly at his lower abdomen and thigh, a move he was all too familiar with. "I know this trick already. It's not about how quickly I can react," Ed thought as he pushed his foot against the blade of her sword, forcing it down into the ground. Sunny gritted her teeth, frustration boiling within her as she swiftly lifted her skirt, revealing several concealed daggers strapped to her thigh. However, just as she was about to draw a few daggers to restrain Ed, he swiftly grabbed her wrist, twisting it backward with precision. At the same time, he seized the strap holding the daggers and flung it aside. However, it seemed that Sunny was not ready to give up just yet. At that moment, she glanced toward the knives and activated a skill of some sort. That was the privilege of the twin sisters, born with the blessing of the stars. Their unique ability allowed them to share skills with each other once a day. And with that ability, she began to manipulate the floating daggers around her. Sunny's concentration intensified as she directed the daggers to hover menacingly in the air and shot straight toward Ed. Right after that, 2 daggers struck directly into him. After seeing this scene, Sunny felt a sense of satisfaction wash over her. However, right after that, her expression turned blank. Because Ed, despite having 2 daggers embedded in his body, wore an expression that was cold and detached, as if he didn't care at all. The recent attack was already within Ed's calculations. Sunny's magic wasn't as intricate as Kelly's, and the only damage inflicted on him was a mere trickle of blood. Ed, while thinking, slowly pulled the daggers out of his body and tossed them aside. Then, he casually kicked Sunny's sword away from her hand and began to strike her down, causing her to cry out in pain. Ed took less than a minute to subdue her. Sunny, now becoming increasingly frantic, realized the situation had escalated to a point of no return. With Alice's expectations looming over her, she knew she couldn't afford to let her down. "Get out of the way." Sunny cried out while shouting, "Get out of the way," but in response to her frantic plea, Ed coldly declared, "Alice will lose." Sunny glanced at him and shouted, "What do you know? What do you know about Miss Alice? Do you have any idea what Alice had to go through? Do you know how many orphans she has taken care of? I am the one of them. If it weren't for Alice, I wouldn't even have a job to earn a living, or even continue to survive in this chaotic kingdom." You don't understand. Turning towards Ed, Sunny's words made him pause for thought. I didn't know, he reflected, thinking about the tale of the seventh swordsman defeated in Sylvania, and how little he had explored Alice's personal story. Even though I've heard everything, my feelings haven't changed. Think to this, Ed coldly said. To be honest, that's not my problem. I can't believe you sided with Lordle, Ed Rothtailor. Sunny gritted her teeth, glaring at him with eyes filled with resentment. Then, right after that, she fainted immediately. Ed also started looking at her with a cold gaze. It's really unfortunate, but I don't know anything about the subplots of the story. What does she expect from me? From the very beginning, there have been many stories in this world that aren't in the game. Measuring the damage from this incident compared to Alice's previous efforts means nothing. Only to judge right and wrong. How come those who can propose philosophies and make their own life decisions are living such a comfortable life? Anyway, the choices and ultimate goals of my life have never changed since I entered this body, not even once. It's simply to survive, Ed thought to himself, and then he quickly ran to Lordle's room to find the pigeon. At that moment, the system also sent him a notification. You have defeated Sunny, a new skill has been unlocked. Pain endurance, allowing him to temporarily forget the pain and stop draining his life force. Finally, he had learned this skill, Ed thought with joy. Next, he successfully broke into Lordle's room through the window. Then, he carefully observed his surroundings and thought. The wooden furniture here was luxurious, along with many decorations. At first glance, it seems a bit excessive. Her desk is covered with papers and books neatly arranged in a perfect manner. That's just her personality, Ed mumbled. And right after that, our main character also found a pigeon to contact the Trade Guild headquarters. Elt is in Sylvania. He needs at least 3 days to return to headquarters and sell all the headquarters equipment immediately. That is what Ed wrote inside the letter delivered to the guild. The messenger pigeon flying through the night sky will return with Elt's head. Speaking of Ed, after successfully sending the letter, he is also having a hard time returning to his house in the forest. Based on my experience, wounds like these will heal quickly. If it weren't for Ziggs and Jenica's help, along with the events unfolding as he wished, Lordle would have definitely plunged headfirst into a disastrous failure. But now the horse-drawn carriage, following Lordle's orders, has escaped from Arkan Island, and Elt will definitely not sit still. Even if he manages to catch the coachman in time and forces him to reveal the whole incident, by then the letter I sent to the headquarters of the Elt merchant will have reached them, leading to the deposition of Elt. If the plan goes smoothly, Lordle must be waiting at the hut, and at this moment, he is also looking ahead in surprise. Oh, greeting me, how nice of you. But right after saying this, Ed's face changed color and he started thinking, I have to admit one thing. It seems I've been too complacent. She is indeed the golden daughter of Lordle. But in this incident, only 5 people bribed by Lordle know that she is the mastermind. If Alti loses her position, Alice will have no choice but to fall into Lordle's hands. Sunny and Kelly are the loyal maidservants to Alice, just like last time when she used money to bribe Willane. But from Lordle's perspective, Ed Rothtailor is a variable that cannot be bought with money. In a remote place in the forest where no one can see, if Lordle eliminates me, her perfect crime will be a resounding success. The essence of Lordle Ketchuln is darkness. She will exploit anyone and then immediately discard them. She is a treacherous person. If you want to live, you have to try your best. But this body. Ed gritted his teeth and thought as he saw Lordle start to hold, a sharp knife is coming towards him. Then immediately after, this knife was thrust forward. And the luckiest thing is that this knife was not aimed at Ed, but rather it was taken out to cut a piece of cloth and bandage his wound. In the end, why did you have to get so hurt? Let me help you. It stopped raining, so I built a bonfire. Let's warm ourselves first, together, she spoke while looking at Ed with tear-filled eyes.